Hello, everybody. My name's Ed. I've been a bar camper low these 10 years past. Enjoyed bar camp every year. Um, we're going to talk about Markdown today. Markdown is a text format, a plain text format that was started in 2004, about 16 years ago, by John Grouper of Daring Fireball fame. He's a tech journalist, focuses mainly on Apple products, and also Aaron Schwartz, who was a open source advocate and programmer, sadly passed away um, some years ago. Uh, Markdown has was started in 2004, and it was mainly just a Perl script to convert from plain text documents into HTML documents. Um, and since then, it's had a little bit of controversy in its life, mainly because of the fact that it the original Perl script was missing a lot of features out of HTML. You couldn't do tables, um, you couldn't do block quotes, other sorts of things like that. And the last update to the Perl script was in December of 2004. It hasn't been updated since then. Since then, a lot of other people have taken it upon themselves to create Markdown processors, um, and that has led to a plethora of somewhat compatible and somewhat incompatible versions out there. So uh, probably the most popular, or probably the de facto standard now, is something called GitHub flavored Markdown. It's used on a lot of sites. It's mostly backwards compatible with the original Markdown, and it is also compatible. There's been a couple of standards attempts that have been made. One of those is called Common Mark. I think Common Mark is the one most of the work has been done. And Common Mark and GitHub flavored Markdown are roughly compatible with each other. I think anything in Common Mark will work in GitHub. So if you're doing any open source development, you're likely to come across Markdown. Um, if you open a project up on GitHub, one of the questions they asked you when you're creating a new repository is, would you like to add a readme.md file to this project, which will allow you to immediately clone the project and download it to your machine? If you say yes to that, you'll have a um, bare bones skeleton Markdown document that you can start editing and put your content in there. And the README page will show up on the main page of your repo when anybody navigates to that. Markdown's also used in a lot of authoring tools. So for instance, I don't have it on this slide, but there's a popular ebook creation tool, and one of its input formats is actually Markdown. I think the preferred one is Markdown. I know a couple of authors down in St. Louis who exclusively use Markdown to write their books. So that's the origin. The the way that Markdown proceeds is similar to the way HTML proceeds, and it has these things called text flows. And a text flow is basically you're writing text in a box, and when you come to the edge of the box, the word wraps around to the next line, and you keep on writing, you keep on writing, you come to the edge of the box again, the right-hand side of the box, and it wraps around to the left-hand side, and it keeps on writing and keeps on writing. And every once in a while, you want to create a new element that's below the current element you're writing. So that's called a block. And if you want to modify any text inside the current block, that's called a span or a text span. So Markdown is divided into two types of categories. either you have paragraphs with embedded text spans in them, or you have blocks. And blocks can be things like headings, lists, block quotes, etc. And so we're going to be seeing that in coming up here. But just to let you know that a block resets the current flow and then readjusts the start of the text flow vertically down and then anchored to the left-hand edge of the box. So Markdown can be used inside of larger HTML, because when you run a Markdown processor, it doesn't wrap the outer body of the HTML with the standard HTML and body tags. It's just giving you the raw HTML, like the P tags and the H1 tags and those sorts of tags like that. So we're going to see a sample Markdown document in the next slide. Okay, this is a sample Markdown document, just a quick hello world. I think I've got you can see there's probably no difference on the screen here. The hello world I'm showing in a pre thing or whatever, and then what it looks like when it's displayed in Markdown. All of these slides were generated using Markdown, so the raw Markdown content is in PRE tags, and then the rendered Markdown content has been translated into HTML. And also, I'm using the original Perl script by John Gruber and Aaron Schwartz to generate all of these slides. So this page also has a note on here about comments. If you want to put a comment in your Markdown that doesn't show up in the final output, it's on this page. However, I've never seen this used anywhere. I think this is very, and it seems to vary quite a bit between Markdown processors. But on this slide is the one that is the most common. So if you want to put a comment in your Markdown that doesn't show up on the output, it's possible to do it. But like I said, I've never seen it. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Sorry about that. All right. On this page here, we're showing how to do headings. Headings are done using hashtags or pound signs. The number of pound signs at the beginning of a line, and you need to have a blank line between the previous block and this block here. So if you have 1 pound sign, that's a heading level 1. 2 pound signs heading level 2. 3 pound signs heading level 3, and all the way up to 6 pound signs for heading level 6. Also on this page, and are we still seeing the same page?
You're on page 5 of example Markdown document.
Oh, okay, great. Because this chat thing came up again. Sorry. So I'm confused. Sorry about that. Anyway, when Laura was looking at this yesterday, she said that she couldn't see all of the lorem ipsum content on there. I'm going to try to navigate to that and see if that works. No, hold on a second. I got to go back over there. Apologize. It's taken the focus off of Safari. Put it back on Cisco Web Teams. Okay. Okay, I'm hoping you're seeing that now. but anyway, that's just basically two paragraphs, and they're separated by blank lines between them. So I don't know how well that rendered, but
You can see it.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You can see it fine.
Oh, okay, great. I'm glad you can see it. All right. Now, text spans are for things like bold and italic, and on newer Markdown processors like GitHub and stuff like that, you can do things like strike through and underline and stuff like that. But this original Markdown Pro script did not support that. So to do bold, you would surround it either by two asterisks, the text that you want. So start with two asterisks, the text, and then follow up by another two asterisks. If you wanted to do italic, it's just one asterisk around it. If you want to do bold and italic, it's three asterisks around it. So those are text spans. I think you can also use underlines in place instead of that. I don't know if I have that on this page or not. So I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think the original ProScript only supported bold and italic. It didn't support any other type of span. It does support inline code fragments, but I don't have a slide for that. So, but we will be talking about how to do source code and raw text in an upcoming slide. Okay, if you want to do a list, lists come in two different flavors. You can do an unordered list, which is mainly bullets and so on and so forth. You can also do ordered lists. So to do a bulleted list, you have a choice of either using, you start on a new line and you use a dash, or you use a single asterisk, or you use a plus symbol. And you can interchange these, so it might make it more visually attractive inside the Markdown document. We'll see how to do that with a nested list on the next slide. But most people I've seen, when they just do a single bulleted list, just use a dash on the first character of the new line. So, and then any text after that, right, shows up inside that bulleted list. An ordered list has one requirement, and that is that it must begin with the number 1 followed by a period. And then any text after that is the first ordered list. The items below that, 2, period, 3, period, 4, period, and so on and so forth, those literally can be in any order. So you could go 1, period, 4, period, 3, period, 2, period, and then they will be reordered in the output as 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot, 4 dot. So that's handy if you forgot something and you wanted to insert a step that you missed and just give it like a higher number, like 9 dot or something, and it'll come out correctly. You don't have to go back and reorder all the other lists, all the items in the list. So, and we're going to go on to looking at nested lists next. And go from there. All right, so a nested list is just like your regular list, except that what you want to do is underneath of the item that you want to nest, you want to indent by 4 spaces. I think a tab will work as well. I haven't tested that. So, but I think 4 spaces or a tab, and then you can put another dash, if we're doing an unordered list here, But you can also, like I said, you can mix and match dashes, stars, and pluses. So on the example I have here, I think I've got a dash followed by a nested version, which is a star, and then so on and forth. I might have had a plus in there too. I don't remember off the top of my head. Um, and then so that works. And then if you want to indent further, indent another 4 spaces. So you want to indent the second level underneath, or the third level underneath the first level, then you want to indent 8 spaces. The same thing is going to be true for ordered lists. Again, remember the rule that the first item in the list has to be marked with 1 period, and anything that's nested in there also has to begin with 1 period. Again, the order doesn't matter after the initial 1 period, so you can mix and match the orders, and then it'll get reshuffled on the output presentation. You can't do things like 1.2.1 and 1.2.3. That doesn't work. If you want to do something that sophisticated, then you can use raw HTML. And that's something I should point out, is that anytime you have a feature that you want to have in your output that is not available in Markdown, you can just enter raw HTML, start a new line, and then just start putting tags in there, and it'll just come through as raw HTML. So that's how people used to do tables back in the day. But now with GitHub flavored Markdown, you can use a much easier format. You can use vertical pipes and underscores and stuff like that to do tables. I don't have a slide on that here, but if we go to the next slide, that'll be our almost our last slide, our second to our last slide. That should be links, how to do links. So somebody let me know if we're on that slide.
We're there.
Okay, great. So links are done in Markdown. There's a bunch of different variations of this or whatever, right? But I'm just going to show you the most common. There's 2 really common ways of doing links. The most common is to put the text of the link, the thing that's going to show up on the website or on the web page, inside of square brackets. That could be the title of the page that you're linking to. And then the URL follows immediately inside of round parentheses. So that should just be straightforward. So open square bracket, text of the link, close square bracket, open right parentheses, the URL, and then close right parentheses. If you want to put an alt tag, like a tooltip or something that you hover over there, add a space between the end of the URL and put the alt tag in double quotes and right up against the closing right parentheses. So that'll translate that into an alt tag. And there's one final way of, or not one final way, but there's one additional way of doing a link. If you just want the raw HTML, or the raw URL, I should say, in the link, if you just put them inside of pointy brackets, as a less than sign with a raw URL, the HTTP link, and then a close angle bracket or greater than sign, that'll just show up as both the text of the link and the clickable link itself. And a lot of links on GitHub are done that way, because a lot of times people are more comfortable with seeing where this link takes me rather than just clicking on what the author said the link takes you to. Okay, we got one more slide to go. Well, we got a couple more slides to go, but anyway, one more slide about Markdown to go. So if we can get over there, that should be like 9 or 10 or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, code blocks.
Code blocks, yes. So thank you. All right. Code blocks in the original Markdown Perl script were done using 4 spaces on a line by themselves. People don't like that method that much anymore, mainly because of the fact that if you're copying and pasting code from your editor into your Markdown document, right, you don't want to have to go in there and then like insert 4 spaces before every single line. That's just really annoying. So a lot of Markdown processors, and this is true in GitHub flavored Markdown, also in Common Mark, have introduced the idea of code fences. So a code fence is any text between 3 or more grave accents, but you need at least 3 of them. So that's that little backtick thing over by the tilde thing. It's usually underneath of the tilde thing or above the tilde thing on the keyboard, sometimes next to the 1 key. And then anything inside of there, right, will show up inside of a PRE tag, and inside of that PRE tag will show up inside of a code block, a code tag with a /code at the end. You can also, a lot of the processors, GitHub, for example, will do this, understand how to do syntax highlighting or syntax coloring. So if it knows about a lot of different languages. So if you do 3 grave accents followed by the word Ruby, as I have in this example here, it will syntax color it in Ruby. This one isn't done that way because I didn't use GitHub to process this document, but that's what it would show up as on your GitHub page. But you could use any language, Perl, Python, C, even Markdown will show up syntax highlighted. Let's see, I don't think I have anything more to say about that. So let's go to the next slide, unless anybody has any questions.
Just one quick question, and that is, can you use a fence code to put in Markdown text?
Yeah, well, this whole slide deck was done that way, right? So yeah, I used the code fences to put in the actual raw Markdown so that you could see the raw Markdown, because otherwise it would show up as rendered text. So I did in fact use code fences for that. So yes, to answer your question.
Okay, thanks.
And the next slide is just some links and stuff like that for future stuff. If we're on that slide. Anyway, there's some stuff I did not cover. I didn't cover horizontal rules. I didn't cover block quotes. I didn't cover a few other items. And there's also tables and stuff like that. Again, those kind of vary a little bit between different processors. I think the most often used one is the one inside a GitHub flavored Markdown, but it's not universal. So if you try to put that up on some other site like Stack Overflow or something like that, it might not come across as a table. So your best bet, if you want to be universal, is to use raw HTML for things like tables and stuff like that. There's also a link on here on this page to some other tools. I use this one quite a bit. Glow. Glow is a command line utility or terminal utility. If you type glow, if you install it and then you type glow, file.md, it will display it it will render it in on your terminal in rendered form, so you can see what it looks like. It does bold and it does like bulleted lists and things like that. So it does a pretty good job. If you just want something quick and dirty, you don't want to have to like fire up a web browser and then serve up the page inside the web browser. If you have the bat command, last night Kyle talked about this command. The bat command is a replacement for cat. It does everything cat does plus a whole lot more. One of the things it does really nicely is it understands a lot of um, syntaxes, for example, programming language syntaxes, does syntax highlighting, coloring, and stuff like that, and it will do syntax coloring on Markdown documents. So I recommend the BAT program. I use it quite a bit. And there's also a link on this page to a short 45-minute movie about Aaron Swartz, the internet's own boy. So it's a very nice thing. He started out, I think he wrote his first line of code when he was 12 or something like that. And he won some like awards when he was like in junior high school and stuff like that. So he's a really uber programmer, Aaron Swartz was. He ended up, well, he was responsible. I don't know if you guys remember this, but we had the Internet Day of Darkness, and that was a protest movement against the Stop Online Privacy Act and PIPA, SOPA and PIPA. If you guys remember that day back so many years ago, I can't remember when it was. He was responsible for organizing that, and it ended up halting it in Congress. It never made it into law, so it was a successful case. But he had had some trouble with the FBI and with a online journal publication, scientific journal, and he just copied all their code down to a laptop, or all their taxpayer-funded articles, journal articles, down to a laptop, and he got caught by the university campus police, and he was getting hassled by the FBI, and he was about to go to court, and he ended up taking his own life. So it's a bit of a sad story about Aaron. I don't have much else. The next slide is just a copy of the Markdown cheat sheet. So again, I recommend going to the presentation page, or I'm sorry, to the GitHub page to get all these slides. And in there's a link to the cheat sheet from the original Markdown cheat sheet that's in there. I recommend using that. So any questions? That's the end of my talk.